Roots of Friendship, A Tale of Resilience. Part 1, The Encounter. The sun was just beginning to dip beneath the horizon when the train rolled into the station. Its long, metallic body gleamed faintly in the evening light, casting shadows across the bustling platform. People rushed past in hurried blurs, dragging suitcases, balancing bags, and exchanging quick glances. Among the chaos stood Lily, a quiet observer of the world around her. Her mother's hand held hers gently, a comforting tether in the noisy world. They were waiting for the evening train that would take them to visit Grandma. Lily loved these trips. They meant stories, warm hugs, and the smell of fresh bread baking in the oven. But tonight, something else caught her attention. Near the far edge of the platform, tucked away from the busy crowd, sat an old man. His face was weathered, lines etched deep into his skin, and his clothes hung loosely on his thin frame. He sat perfectly still, as if the world around him had faded away, leaving him alone in his quiet bubble. Lily tugged on her mother's hand, curiosity tugging at her heart. "Who's that man, Mama?" Her mother looked in the direction of Lily's gaze, her eyes softening with sympathy. "I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe he's waiting for someone." Lily tilted her head, studying the man. He didn't look like he was waiting for anyone. There was something sad in the way he sat, as if time had forgotten him, and now he waited for nothing. Without a word, Lily reached into her small backpack and pulled out the apple her mother had packed for her earlier. It was a bright, shiny red, and it fit perfectly in her palm. She glanced up at her mother, who nodded softly, encouraging her silent question. With tentative steps, Lily approached the old man. His eyes were cast down, staring at his worn shoes, and he didn't notice her at first. She hesitated for a moment, the apple feeling heavier in her hand, before quietly speaking. "Sir," she said softly, her voice almost lost in the noise of the station. "Would you like an apple?" The old man lifted his head slowly, his eyes cloudy with age, and for a moment, they didn't register the small girl standing in front of him. But then he blinked, and his gaze sharpened, focusing on her face, and then on the apple in her outstretched hand. Silence fell between them as the old man stared at the apple, his hands trembling slightly. After what felt like an eternity, he reached out and took it from her, his fingers wrapping around the fruit as if it were the most precious thing in the world. Tears welled up in his eyes, glistening in the dim light of the station. When he finally spoke, his voice was raspy and thick with emotion. "It wasn't the food I needed," he whispered, his eyes locking onto Lily's. "It was the feeling of being cared for." Lily stood for a moment, her eyes wide as she watched the old man take the apple into his shaky hands. His words hung in the air, delicate and fragile, as if they could break at any second. For a girl of only 10, there was much she didn't understand about the weight of his words. But she could feel it, a quiet tug at her heart, something unspoken that made her feel deeply connected to him in that brief moment. She shuffled her feet and glanced back at her mother, who had been watching quietly from a short distance. Her mother gave her a soft, approving smile, the kind that spoke of pride and understanding without needing words. "Thank you," Mr. Hale said, his voice rough, as if it hadn't been used for a while. His eyes, though clouded by age, held a spark of something that hadn't been there a moment ago. No one has done something like this for me in a long time." Lily wasn't sure what to say. She knew the apple had meant something to him, but his reaction seemed much bigger than a simple gift of fruit. She opened her mouth, searching for words that would help, but her mother stepped forward, kneeling down beside her. "Are you all right?" her mother asked, her voice as kind as a soft breeze, touching lightly on the edges of the old man's sorrow. He nodded slowly, but the gesture was weighted down with years of something unspoken. "I'm fine," he said, though his voice trembled slightly. "Just surprised." Lily watched as her mother placed a gentle hand on the old man's shoulder, a gesture so small, but it seemed to ease the tension in his thin frame. "My daughter is very thoughtful," her mother said, glancing at Lily with a smile. "I think she has a gift for seeing what others need." Mr. Hale looked between the two of them, and for a moment, his weathered face softened, the hard lines carved into his skin smoothing out. He looked down at the apple again, as if it had brought with it something long forgotten. "I used to grow apples, you know," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, as if speaking the memory aloud might make it disappear. "Years ago with my wife." Lily's eyes brightened at this. "You did?" Mr. Hale nodded, his lips curling into the faintest hint of a smile. "We had a whole orchard, rows and rows of apple trees, blooming every spring. We'd pick the apples together, and she'd bake pies. The whole house smelled like apples for weeks." His voice cracked slightly, and he paused, his eyes growing distant as the memories washed over him. Lily leaned in, her curiosity piqued. She couldn't imagine a place filled with apple trees as far as the eye could see. It sounded like something out of a fairy tale. "What happened to your orchard?" she asked innocently, her eyes wide with wonder. The question seemed to hang in the air for a long time. The old man didn't answer right away. Instead, his face tightened, and the warmth in his expression dimmed slightly, replaced by the heaviness of reality. "It's gone now," he said after a long pause. "Sold it after my wife passed. The trees, they don't bloom like they used to." Lily's heart sank a little, though she didn't fully understand why. She felt the sadness in his words, a deep ache that seemed to stretch beyond the loss of a mere orchard. It was as if something bigger had been taken from him, something that no longer let the trees bloom, even though the land still existed. Her mother squeezed her hand gently, guiding her back toward the benches where they had been sitting. "It was kind of you to share your apple, Lily," she whispered, "but we should give him some space now." Lily nodded, though her feet were reluctant to move. She glanced back at Mr. Hale, still sitting alone on the cold bench. His hands held the apple gently in his lap, his eyes far away, lost in memories she couldn't even begin to imagine. But there was something about him that made her want to stay close, to keep him company the way he seemed to need. But her mother was right. She had done what she could, for now. The rest of the evening passed quietly. Lily and her mother boarded the train when it arrived, and they took their seats next to each other by the window. The rhythmic clatter of the train wheels on the tracks usually lulled Lily into a half-asleep daydream, but tonight, her thoughts kept wandering back to the old man at the station. She leaned her head against her mother's shoulder, the soft fabric of her mother's coat comforting against her cheek. "Why was he so sad, Mama?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper as the train rumbled along. Her mother sighed softly and stroked her hair. "Sometimes, people carry sadness with them for a long time, sweetheart. Mr. Hale, it seems like he's been carrying his for a very long time." Lily didn't like the idea of someone carrying sadness, especially someone as quiet and gentle as Mr. Hale. It seemed like too heavy a burden for him. She squeezed her mother's hand tightly. "Do you think he'll be okay?" she asked, her voice laced with the innocent concern of a child. Her mother smiled down at her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I think you helped him tonight, Lily. Sometimes, all it takes is a little kindness to remind people they're not alone." The next time they went to the train station, Lily looked for him. Her eyes scanned the benches as they stepped onto the platform, her heart hoping to see the familiar figure of Mr. Hale sitting there, waiting. But today, the bench where he had sat before was empty. The cold breeze drifted through the station, carrying with it the sound of bustling passengers, but there was no sign of the old man. Lily's shoulders sagged slightly as she and her mother waited for their train. She had wanted to give him another apple. Something about the simple gesture made her feel connected to him, as if she could somehow help carry a piece of the sadness he held so tightly. But maybe he had found someone else to share with. Or maybe he didn't come to the station every day. Just as she was about to give up searching, her mother's gentle voice brought her out of her thoughts. "There he is," she said quietly, pointing toward the far corner of the platform. Lily followed her mother's gaze and spotted him, Mr. Hale, sitting quietly on a different bench this time, his back to the wall, watching the people go by. He didn't seem to notice them at first, his eyes distant as they had been before. Lily's heart lifted. Without a word, she reached into her bag and pulled out another apple, the shiny red skin catching the light. Her mother smiled, giving her a nod of encouragement. She approached him slowly, her small footsteps lost in the noise of the station. When she reached his bench, she held the apple out to him, just like before. "Would you like another apple, Mr. Hale?" she asked softly. The old man blinked, his eyes coming into focus as he looked at her. A slow smile spread across his face, and this time, there were no tears in his eyes, just a quiet, gentle warmth. He reached out and took the apple, his hands steadier than they had been the last time. "You remembered my name," he said, his voice filled with a kind of surprised gratitude. Lily nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "Of course." He looked at the apple in his hand for a long moment, turning it over as if it were something precious. Then he looked back at her, his expression softer than before. "You're very kind, Lily," he said. "You remind me of someone I used to know." As the weeks passed, Lily and her mother continued their trips to visit Grandma, and each time, they saw Mr. Hale at the station. Sometimes he sat on the same bench, and sometimes he was in a different corner, always watching the world go by. And every time, Lily brought him an apple. Their conversations were simple at first, short exchanges about the weather or the train schedules, but slowly, as the seasons began to change, so did their relationship. Lily learned more about Mr. Hale's life, and he, in turn, began to look forward to their brief meetings at the station. The apples, it seemed, had become more than just a gift. They were a symbol of something deeper, a connection that neither of them fully understood, but both of them felt. And so, without realizing it, Lily had become a part of Mr. Hale's world, just as he had become a part of hers. Part 2. Mr. Hale's story. The following week, Lily was more excited than ever to go to the station. Since she'd first met Mr. Hale, their brief conversations had become the highlight of her trips with her mother. Each time, she would bring him an apple, and each time, his smile grew a little warmer, his words a little less guarded. But today, Lily had something more than an apple. She had a question. Her mother, as always, walked with her to the platform, holding her hand. The train was still a few minutes away, and Lily's eyes darted across the busy station, searching for the familiar face she had grown so fond of. There he was, sitting on his usual bench, tucked away near the edge of the platform where the shadows fell just right. His back was slightly hunched, as if the weight of something invisible pressed down on him. But when he saw Lily approach, a small smile lifted the corners of his mouth. Lily hurried over, pulling an apple from her bag and handing it to him with a bright grin. "Here you go, Mr. Hale," she chirped, her eyes full of excitement. He chuckled softly, taking the apple with both hands. "You're too good to me, Lily." She stood there, her curiosity bubbling over, unable to hold her question back any longer. "Mr. Hale," she began, her voice gentle but full of the sincerity only a child could manage, "what happened to your wife?" The question hung in the air, almost too delicate to touch. For a moment, Mr. Hale's smile faltered. His hands, still holding the apple, stilled. His eyes, clouded with age, grew distant again, as if they were seeing something far away. Lily, sensing she had stepped into a space of sadness, quickly tried to backtrack. "You don't have to answer if you don't want to," she said softly, biting her lip. "I was just curious." But Mr. Hale shook his head. "No, it's all right, Lily. It's just been a long time since anyone asked me about her." He shifted on the bench, setting the apple in his lap as he gathered his thoughts. There was a long silence, and Lily stood quietly, waiting patiently. She didn't understand all the complexities of grief, but something told her that Mr. Hale had been carrying this sadness for a very long time, and that maybe it was time for him to let a little bit of it go. "We were married for 40 years, he said finally, his voice low and filled with the weight of memory. "Her name was Margaret. She was the kindest person I ever met. We had an apple orchard together, out in the countryside. It wasn't a big place, but it was ours. We tended to those trees together for years, every season, and every year, the apples were sweeter than the last." He paused, his eyes drifting as if he could still see the orchard in full bloom, the rows of trees stretching out under the warm summer sun. Lily could almost picture it herself, the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze, the scent of ripe apples filling the air. "She loved those trees," he continued. "But more than anything, she loved the people who came to pick the apples. She would bake pies and hand them out to the children who visited. She always said that the best part of growing apples wasn't the fruit, but the way it brought people together." His voice cracked slightly, and he cleared his throat, his hands tightening around the apple in his lap. "We had 3 children, too. They helped us with the orchard when they were young, but as they grew older, they left, moved to the city for jobs, families of their own." Lily felt a small pang of sadness in her chest. She knew what it was like to miss someone, even if only for a short while. Her own father traveled often for work, and though he was never gone for too long, she still felt a hollow ache when she missed him. "What happened to the orchard?" she asked quietly. Mr. Hale's expression darkened. His gaze dropped to the apple in his lap, and he turned it over in his hand slowly. "Margaret, she got sick," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It happened so suddenly. One day, she was out in the orchard, picking apples like always, and the next she was in the hospital." Lily's heart sank. She had known the story would be sad, but hearing it out loud felt heavier than she had expected. The sorrow in Mr. Hale's voice wrapped around her, making her chest feel tight. "We fought it," Mr. Hale continued, his voice growing a little stronger. "For months we fought, but in the end, there was nothing we could do." Lily didn't know what to say. She had never lost someone that way before. She couldn't imagine how much it must have hurt. "When she passed," Mr. Hale said, "I couldn't stay at the orchard anymore. It was too quiet, too empty without her. The trees didn't bloom the same way, not without her there. So I sold it, moved to the city to be closer to my children. But they had their own lives, and soon enough, I found myself alone again." There was a long silence. Lily looked down at her feet, feeling a mixture of sadness and guilt. She hadn't meant to bring up such painful memories. "I'm sorry," she whispered. But Mr. Hale shook his head. "Don't be sorry, Lily. I like talking about her. It reminds me of the good days. And you remind me of her in a way. The way you care about people. She always did, too." Lily smiled softly, her heart feeling a little lighter at his words. Over the next few weeks, Lily and Mr. Hale's conversations grew deeper. He shared stories of his life with Margaret, of their children, and of the orchard. The sadness in his voice never quite disappeared, but as he talked, it seemed to lift just a little, like a heavy blanket slowly being pulled back. Lily found herself thinking about Mr. Hale even when she wasn't at the station. She would lie in bed at night, imagining the orchard as he had described it, the trees heavy with fruit, the sun warm on her skin, and Margaret's laughter ringing through the air. She wondered what it must have been like to live a life so full of love, only to lose it all in the end. One evening, as she and her mother boarded the train to visit Grandma, Lily asked her mother a question that had been on her mind for a while. "Mama," she said softly, "do you think it's possible for someone to be lonely even if they have family?" Her mother looked down at her, a thoughtful expression on her face. "Yes, sweetheart," she said gently. "Sometimes, even if we have people who care about us, we can still feel lonely. It's not always about who is around us, but how connected we feel to them." Lily thought about that for a long time. She thought about Mr. Hale, sitting alone at the station every day, waiting for a train that never came. She thought about how, even though he had children, he still felt alone. She wanted to do something more for him. She wanted to help him feel less lonely, but she wasn't sure how. One afternoon, as they sat together on the bench, Lily turned to Mr. Hale with a shy smile. "Mr. Hale," she said, "would you like to come visit my grandma's house with us one day?" Mr. Hale looked at her, surprised. "Visit your grandma?" Lily nodded enthusiastically. "She's really nice, and she bakes the best pies. Maybe it would be fun. You wouldn't have to be alone at the station." Mr. Hale's expression softened, and for a moment, Lily thought he might say yes. But then his face clouded with something she couldn't quite place, something like hesitation or fear. "Thank you, Lily," he said quietly. "That's a very kind offer, but I think the station is where I belong for now." Lily's heart sank a little, but she nodded, understanding in her own way. Maybe Mr. Hale wasn't ready to leave the station just yet. Maybe it was a place where he felt close to Margaret, where he could sit quietly and remember the life they had shared. But even so, she made a promise to herself. She would keep bringing him apples, and she would keep talking to him, as long as he needed. As winter began to settle in, the station grew colder. The once bustling platform was now filled with people bundled up in coats and scarves, their breath visible in the crisp air. Lily, too, felt the chill, but she didn't mind. Each trip to the station meant another chance to see Mr. Hale, and she looked forward to it more than ever. One day, as they sat together, Mr. Hale looked at her with a warm smile. "Thank you, Lily," he said, his voice soft, "for everything." Lily tilted her head, confused. "For what?" "For reminding me," he said, "that even when we think we're alone, there's always someone who cares." Part 3. A New Beginning. As the weeks turned into months, winter settled over the train station like a soft blanket, blanketing the ground in a gentle layer of snow. The world outside seemed to slow down, as if time itself had paused to admire the beauty of the cold, white landscape. But inside the station, there was warmth, laughter, and the steady hum of life moving forward. Lily continued her routine of visiting Mr. Hale each time she and her mother took the train. The apples became a ritual, a small but significant gesture that connected their lives. With each visit, the stories grew richer, the laughter deeper, and their bond stronger. One particularly cold afternoon, Lily arrived at the station bundled in her favorite blue coat, a woolen scarf wrapped snugly around her neck. She clutched a small bag filled with apples, her breath visible in the crisp air as she hurried toward the bench where Mr. Hale usually sat. But when she reached the spot, her heart sank. The bench was empty. "Mr. Hale," she called out, scanning the area for his familiar figure. The platform was busy, and the noise of travelers echoed all around, but there was no sign of him. The seat next to the bench was empty too, and a sense of unease settled over her. Where could he be? She wondered aloud, glancing over at her mother, who had just joined her. "Maybe he's just inside the station, trying to stay warm," her mother suggested, but even she looked concerned. Lily's heart raced with worry. Mr. Hale had always been there, waiting for her, and the thought of him missing made her anxious. Determined to find him, she took a few steps toward the station doors. The warmth inside enveloped her as they stepped in, the scent of coffee and pastries wafting through the air. She looked around, her eyes darting from one corner to another, searching for any sign of him. "Lily," her mother called softly, drawing her attention to a small cafe at the far end of the station. There, at a table in the corner, sat Mr. Hale. He was hunched over a cup of tea, steam rising from the mug, but he looked different, paler, perhaps, and more fragile than she remembered. Lily's heart swelled with relief, and she rushed over to him, her footsteps quickening. "Mr. Hale," she exclaimed, her voice a mixture of joy and concern. "I was worried about you." He looked up at her, a faint smile crossing his lips, though his eyes held a hint of weariness. "Hello, Lily," he said, his voice softer than usual. "I'm sorry. I thought I'd try something different today." Lily peered at the tea. "Is it good?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. "It's warm," he replied, taking a small sip. "But I must admit, I miss my apples." Lily grinned, holding up her bag triumphantly. "I brought you some. I'll never let you run out of apples, Mr. Hale." He chuckled, the sound comforting like a blanket. "You are a treasure, my dear." As she sat down across from him, Lily couldn't help but notice the shadows under his eyes. "Are you feeling okay?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. "You look tired." Mr. Hale sighed, setting his cup down slowly. "It's just the cold, I suppose." Winter always seems to seep into my bones. But you can't let winter win, Lily exclaimed, her determination rising. We have to do something fun, something to chase the cold away. He looked at her, his expression softening. What do you have in mind? Well, Lily began, her mind racing with ideas. What if we go to my grandma's house this weekend? She always has the best cookies, and she loves to have guests. I know she would be happy to see you. Mr. Hale hesitated, his eyes flickering with uncertainty. Lily, I appreciate the invitation, but… Please, Lily interrupted, her voice earnest. You've told me about your orchard and all your stories. Grandma would love to hear them too, and it will be warm there, I promise. His resolve began to soften under her bright gaze. I suppose I could visit for just a little while, he said slowly, a smile tugging at his lips. Lily beamed. Yay. It's going to be fun, I promise. I'll ask my mom to pack some extra cookies for the train. The day of the visit arrived, and Lily's excitement bubbled over. She could hardly contain her joy as they made their way to the train station. Mr. Hale was dressed warmly, his hat snugly pulled over his head, and for the first time in a while, he seemed lighter, almost buoyant. As they boarded the train, Lily chattered animatedly about everything she could think of, her favorite games, the books she had read, and how she couldn't wait to show Mr. Hale her grandma's cozy kitchen. Mr. Hale listened intently, his eyes sparkling with a hint of amusement. You have a lovely spirit, Lily, he said, his voice warm. It's a joy to be around you. Lily grinned, her heart swelling with happiness. She felt like she was doing something important, something that truly mattered. When they arrived at Grandma's house, the familiar warmth enveloped them like a hug. The kitchen was filled with the smell of freshly baked cookies, the kind that made your mouth water and your heart feel at home. Grandma, Lily shouted, running ahead into the kitchen, leaving Mr. Hale to follow at a more measured pace. Her grandmother turned, her face lighting up with joy. Lily, dear, she exclaimed, wrapping her arms around her granddaughter. Oh, how wonderful to see you. And who is this? She turned to Mr. Hale, a welcoming smile spreading across her face. This is Mr. Hale. He's my friend from the train station, Lily introduced, beaming with pride. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Hale, Grandma said warmly, reaching out to shake his hand. I've heard so much about you. It's lovely to meet you too, he replied, his voice steady, though he looked a little taken aback by the warmth of her welcome. Thank you for having me. Grandma waved her hand dismissively. Nonsense. You're always welcome here. Now, let me get you both some cookies. She bustled around the kitchen, her movements graceful and efficient, and soon enough, she returned with a plate stacked high with warm chocolate chip cookies. Lily's eyes lit up as she took one and handed it to Mr. Hale. Try it, she urged, her excitement infectious. As Mr. Hale took a bite, his expression shifted, delight flooding his face. These are amazing, he said, his voice full of genuine surprise. I haven't had cookies like this in years. Grandma's the best, Lily said proudly, her heart soaring. She felt a warm glow knowing that she had brought him here, that he was experiencing joy again. After the cookies, they settled into the cozy living room, where Grandma had set up a small fire in the fireplace. The flames crackled softly, casting a warm glow over the room. Lily snuggled up next to Mr. Hale on the couch, her eyes wide with anticipation. Now, Mr. Hale, Grandma said, leaning forward with a twinkle in her eye. Tell me about your orchard. Lily has been raving about it. Mr. Hale chuckled, a hint of shyness creeping into his demeanor. Oh, there isn't much to tell, he began, but as he spoke, his voice gained strength. He shared tales of the apple trees, the joy of harvest time, and how Margaret had turned the fruit into delicious pies that brought the community together. Lily listened, captivated, her eyes wide as she imagined the vibrant orchard and the laughter of children playing among the trees. She could see it all. The rows of trees heavy with fruit, the sun shining brightly overhead, and Margaret's laughter ringing through the air. As Mr. Hale spoke, Lily noticed how the shadows seemed to lift from his face. He was animated, lost in the stories of his past, and for the first time, she felt as if she was witnessing the true essence of who he was, a man who had loved deeply and had so many memories to share. As the evening wore on, Grandma shared stories of her own, tales of her childhood, the mischief she and her siblings had caused, and the warmth of family gatherings filled with laughter and love. Mr. Hale listened, a soft smile on his lips, and Lily felt the atmosphere in the room shift, becoming richer and fuller, as if they were weaving a tapestry of connection. When the night began to wind down, Grandma looked at Mr. Hale and asked, "Would you like to come again, Mr. Hale? I'd love to hear more of your stories." Mr. Hale's eyes sparkled with surprise. "I would be honored," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Lily's heart soared at the thought of Mr. Hale becoming a part of their family gatherings. She could picture him sitting at their table during holidays, sharing laughter and stories, and it filled her with joy. As they made their way back to the train station that night, Mr. Hale walked with a new lightness in his step. The chill of winter didn't seem so harsh anymore, and for the first time in a long while, he felt a glimmer of hope. "Thank you for today, Lily," he said quietly, looking down at her with gratitude. "You've given me a gift I never knew I needed." Lily beamed up at him, her heart warm with happiness. "I just want you to be happy, Mr. Hale. You deserve it." He smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling with warmth. "You are a remarkable young lady, Lily. Thank you for reminding me what it feels like to belong." As they boarded the train, the warmth of the day lingered in their hearts. Lily leaned against the window, watching the world outside transform into a blur of white and gray. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that she had helped bring a little light back into Mr. Hale's life. And in that moment, as the train chugged along the tracks, she realized that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness could spark the biggest changes. She had made a difference in his life, just as he had in hers. Part 4. The Journey Forward. Spring blossomed gently around the train station, coaxing life back into the world after the harsh winter months. Flowers began to peek through the melting snow, painting the ground in vibrant colors, while the air was filled with the sweet scent of renewal. With each passing day, the days grew longer, and sunlight spilled across the platform like a warm embrace. Lily's visits to Mr. Hale became a cherished part of her routine, and she eagerly anticipated each trip. Every Saturday, she and her mother would catch the train to the station, bringing a small picnic basket filled with sandwiches and apples. They would spend hours together, sharing stories, laughter, and dreams for the future. One Saturday morning, as they approached the train station, Lily noticed a small crowd gathered near the entrance. Concern etched on her mother's face as they walked closer. "I wonder what's going on," she murmured. Curiosity piqued, Lily dashed ahead, weaving through the throng of people. As she reached the front, her heart dropped. Mr. Hale was standing there, his hands trembling, a worried expression etched on his face. He was surrounded by officials and a few concerned strangers. "Mr. Hale," Lily shouted, rushing forward. "What's wrong?" He turned to her, relief flooding his features when he saw her. "Lily, His voice faltered as he glanced back at the officials. "Sir, we need to speak with you," one of the officials said, his tone serious. "There's been a report of a potential eviction regarding your property. We need to discuss your options." Lily's heart sank. She had heard stories of people losing their homes, but never thought it would affect someone she cared about. "What does that mean?" she asked, her voice trembling. Mr. Hale sighed, looking older than ever in that moment. "It means that the bank believes I can't afford to keep the orchard anymore. They want to take it away from me." "No," Lily protested, her voice rising. "You can't lose your orchard. It's your home." Mr. Hale knelt down to her level, his eyes filled with both gratitude and sadness. "Lily, it's complicated. I've fallen behind on payments, and without Margaret," his voice trailed off, the weight of loss heavy in the air. Determination surged within Lily. "But we can help. I can help. We'll figure it out together." She turned to the officials, her small frame trembling with passion. "You can't take his home away. He has so many stories and memories there." One of the officials, a kind-looking woman, softened at Lily's words. "We understand how important this is, young lady, but the law is the law. Without a plan to pay the debt, we have to proceed." Mr. Hale gently placed a hand on Lily's shoulder. "Thank you, but it's not something you can fix, my dear." "Maybe it is," Lily insisted. She thought of her grandma's warm kitchen and the kindness of their community. "What if we organize a fundraiser? We could ask people to help. They love you, Mr. Hale. They would want to help." Flicker of hope ignited in Mr. Hale's eyes, but he hesitated. "Lily, that's a big undertaking. I don't want to put you through any trouble." Lily shook her head vigorously. "You mean too much to me, and to everyone else. You have to at least try. I know we can do it together." The officials exchanged glances, and the kind woman stepped closer to Mr. Hale. "Perhaps a fundraiser is worth considering. Community support can be powerful if you have a plan." "See." Lily beamed, her enthusiasm infectious. "We can do this. Let's talk to Grandma. She'll have ideas." With a deep breath, Mr. Hale nodded. "All right, we can give it a try. I'll need your help, Lily, but I'm willing to fight for the orchard." The officials smiled gently. "If you can gather enough community support, it might just be the solution you need." As the officials departed, the reality of their situation settled heavily in the air. Mr. Hale looked at Lily, his expression a mixture of admiration and concern. "You're quite remarkable, you know that?" "Only because I have you," Lily replied, her eyes sparkling. "Now, let's go get Grandma." Over the next week, Lily and Mr. Hale poured their hearts into planning the fundraiser. They spent hours brainstorming ideas, and Lily was relentless in her determination. They enlisted Grandma's help, who became their greatest ally in organizing the event. Together, they began to rally the community, sharing Mr. Hale's story and the significance of his orchard. Lily learned to make flyers, and with Grandma's guidance, they set out to post them around town. The flyers read, "Save Mr. Hale's Orchard. Community fundraiser. A day of stories, fun, and friendship." As they distributed the flyers, Lily's excitement grew. She knocked on doors, spoke with shopkeepers, and even invited children from her school to join in. Everyone seemed eager to help. Mr. Hale was beloved in the community, a gentle soul who had always been there for others. On the day of the fundraiser, the sun shone brightly, illuminating the vibrant colors of spring. The local park was alive with energy as families set up booths, games, and tables laden with delicious treats. Lily darted around, her laughter echoing through the air as she helped set up. Mr. Hale arrived, looking a little overwhelmed but deeply touched by the turnout. "I can't believe how many people came," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "It's because you mean so much to us," Lily said, her heart swelling with pride. "Now let's show them how amazing you are." As the event began, people shared their memories of Mr. Hale and his orchard. They played games, enjoyed homemade snacks, and gathered around as Mr. Hale recounted stories of the harvest festivals he used to host with Margaret, filling the air with warmth and laughter. Lily helped with a storytelling corner, inviting children to sit and listen as Mr. Hale spun tales of adventure and imagination, each story wrapping around the listeners like a cozy blanket. The more he spoke, the more the shadows lifted from his face, replaced by a glow of joy. As the day wore on, donations poured in, and the sense of community grew stronger. Lily watched as neighbors, friends, and even strangers came together, united by a common cause. She felt a surge of hope, realizing that they were making a real difference. As the sun began to set, casting a golden hue over the park, Mr. Hale stood up on a small platform, his heart brimming with gratitude. "I don't have the words to express how thankful I am for all of you," he said, his voice steady and warm. "You have shown me that even in my darkest moments, I am not alone. You have reminded me of the importance of community, of kindness, and of love." Applause erupted from the crowd, and Lily beamed with pride. She had helped make a change, and it felt like magic. "Let's keep the stories going," Mr. Hale declared, inviting people to share their favorite memories of the orchard. One by one, voices filled the air, weaving tales of joy and connection. Each story was a thread that bound them all together, a tapestry of community woven with laughter and love. As the stars began to twinkle above, Lily felt a sense of fulfillment like never before. They had not only raised enough money to save Mr. Hale's orchard, but had also revived a spirit of togetherness that had been missing for so long. Later that night, as they packed up the last of the supplies, Mr. Hale turned to Lily, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "You are the heart of this community, Lily. I will forever be grateful for your kindness." "Just doing what friends do," she said, her smile bright. "And now, you can keep telling your stories." As they headed home, Mr. Hale walked with a spring in his step. He was no longer just the lonely old man at the train station. He was a cherished member of a community that valued him. And for Lily, it was a reminder that love and kindness could bridge the gaps of loneliness, bringing people together in the most beautiful ways. Part 5. Seeds of Hope. The aftermath of the fundraiser left a ripple of joy throughout the community. Word spread quickly about the successful event that had saved Mr. Hale's orchard, and the people who had gathered to support him felt a renewed sense of connection. The park, once filled with laughter and stories, now echoed with the promise of new beginnings. Lily was buzzing with excitement. The success of the fundraiser had ignited a spark within her, and she was eager to keep the momentum going. "Mr. Hale," she exclaimed during one of their Saturday visits, "we should have more community events. We could host a picnic, or even a harvest festival in the fall." Mr. Hale chuckled, his eyes shining with warmth. "That sounds wonderful, Lily. But let's take it one step at a time. The orchard will need some care now that it's spring." "Right," Lily said, her enthusiasm unwavering. "We can start planning right now. What do you need help with?" Mr. Hale leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful expression crossing his face. "Well, I have some pruning to do, and we'll need to clear out some old weeds to make room for the new growth. Would you be willing to help me?" "Of course," Lily replied, practically bouncing in her seat. "I'd love to help with the orchard." With that, their plans were set in motion. The following weekend, armed with gardening gloves, hats, and an abundance of enthusiasm, Lily and Mr. Hale made their way to the orchard. As they approached, the sight took Lily's breath away. Rows upon rows of apple trees stood tall and proud, their branches just beginning to blossom with delicate pink and white flowers. "This is amazing," she gasped, taking it all in. "It's even more beautiful than I imagined." "It's been a long time since I've seen it this lively," Mr. Hale said, a smile spreading across his face. "Thank you for bringing me back, Lily." Together, they began their work. Mr. Hale taught Lily how to prune the trees, explaining how to cut the branches to encourage new growth. She listened intently, her fingers working deftly alongside his as they tended to the trees. With each snip of the shears, she felt a sense of purpose, knowing that they were nurturing something beautiful together. As they worked, they shared stories and laughter, the air filled with the sweet scent of blossoms and the warm sun kissing their skin. Mr. Hale shared memories of past harvests, the joy of picking apples, and the laughter of children running through the trees during festivals. Lily could picture it all, and it made her heart swell with happiness. "Do you think we can have a festival this year?" Lily asked as they took a break, wiping sweat from their brows. After all the work we put in, it would be amazing to celebrate. Mr. Hale's eyes twinkled at the idea. Absolutely. If we start preparing now, we could make it happen. Excitement bubbled between them as they discussed plans for the festival, envisioning a day filled with games, food, and stories shared under the sun. Lily felt a thrill run through her at the thought of bringing the community together again, just like they had done for the fundraiser. As spring blossomed into summer, their days at the orchard became a routine. Lily visited every weekend, and each time, Mr. Hale imparted more knowledge about the land, the trees, and the joy of nurturing life. With every visit, Lily felt more connected to the orchard, to Mr. Hale, and to the life that flourished around them. One sunny Saturday, while they were pruning, Mr. Hale noticed that Lily was unusually quiet. "What's on your mind, dear?" he asked gently, pausing to look at her. Lily hesitated, her brow furrowing slightly. I want to make sure you're okay, Mr. Hale. I know the orchard is important, but I worry about you too." He studied her for a moment, his expression softening. "You're very kind to care, Lily. I appreciate it more than you know. There are still hard days, but with the community's support and your friendship, I feel stronger." Lily smiled, feeling a rush of warmth. "You're not alone anymore, Mr. Hale. You have all of us, and I'll always be here to help." As summer rolled in, the orchard began to flourish. The trees became laden with tiny green apples, promising a bountiful harvest. The flowers that had once adorned the branches were replaced by the vibrant greens of life, and each day brought new wonders. One afternoon, while picking apples, Lily noticed a group of children playing nearby, their laughter echoing through the trees. She smiled at the sight, memories of her own childhood flooding back. "Mr. Hale," she said, her eyes sparkling, "what if we invited the children to help us with the harvest this year? They would love it." "That's a brilliant idea, Lily," he exclaimed, his voice filled with enthusiasm. "The more, the merrier. We could teach them about the trees and let them experience the joy of picking apples." Excitement bubbled within Lily as she pictured the children running through the orchard, their hands reaching for the ripe fruit, their laughter mingling with the warm summer breeze. "I can talk to their parents and see if they'd like to come," she said, determination shining in her eyes. With each passing week, they organized the details for the festival, planning games and activities that would allow families to bond and share in the harvest's bounty. The excitement in the community grew, and as word spread about the festival, more and more families expressed their interest. On the day of the festival, the orchard buzzed with life. Colorful banners fluttered in the warm breeze, and the scent of baked goods wafted through the air. Children dashed through the trees, laughter ringing out as they picked apples and played games. Families gathered under the shade of the trees, sharing stories and enjoying each other's company. Lily watched with pride as Mr. Hale interacted with the families, sharing stories about the orchard and the importance of caring for the land. He looked happier than she had ever seen him, his face aglow with joy. "Thank you for this, Lily," he said, his voice filled with emotion as they stood together, taking in the scene. "You've brought life back into this place." "I couldn't have done it without you," she replied, her heart swelling with gratitude. "You're the reason everyone is here today. Your stories and your orchard are so special." As the sun began to set, casting a golden light over the orchard, Mr. Hale gathered everyone together for a final story. The crowd hushed, their eyes fixed on him, eager to hear his words. He spoke of the history of the orchard, the laughter that had echoed through the trees, and the love he and Margaret had poured into the land. "This orchard is more than just trees. It's a testament to community, love, and the connections we forge," he said, his voice steady. "Thank you all for being here and for reminding me of the beauty that can blossom from kindness." Lily watched as the crowd erupted into applause, her heart racing with pride. She realized in that moment that they had created something magical, a place where people could come together, share joy, and create lasting memories. As the night sky filled with stars, families gathered around a bonfire, sharing stories and laughter. The warmth of the flames danced in the air, wrapping around them like a hug. Lily felt a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that they had cultivated not just an orchard, but a community. As the festival came to a close, Mr. Hale turned to Lily, his eyes twinkling with gratitude. "You've helped me plant seeds of hope, dear girl. I can never thank you enough." Lily smiled back, her heart full. "You've planted those seeds in me too, Mr. Hale. I've learned so much from you, and I'm so grateful for our friendship." In that moment, surrounded by the laughter and warmth of the festival, both Lily and Mr. Hale knew that their bond was unbreakable. Together, they had nurtured not only the orchard but also the love and kindness that had brought them all together. Part 6. Storms on the Horizon. As summer transitioned into fall, the orchard glowed with the rich hues of ripe apples and golden leaves. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of the harvest and the promise of change. Lily and Mr. Hale reveled in the beauty of the season, spending their weekends picking apples and preparing for the next harvest festival. Lily loved the rhythm of the orchard, the sound of apples falling into baskets, the rustle of leaves in the wind, and the warmth of the sun on her back. Each day spent there deepened her connection with Mr. Hale and the land, and she felt a sense of pride in what they had built together. However, amidst the beauty, the first signs of trouble began to appear. One evening, as they were cleaning up after a long day of picking apples, Mr. Hale received an unexpected phone call. Lily watched as his expression shifted from confusion to concern. When he hung up, the weight of the news hung heavy in the air. "Mr. Hale, what's wrong?" she asked, her heart racing with worry. He took a deep breath, his voice trembling slightly. "It's the bank. They want me to meet with them next week to discuss my loan. They're threatening to foreclose if I don't make a payment soon." Lily's heart sank. "But you've worked so hard. The orchard is thriving." Mr. Hale nodded, his brow furrowing. "Yes, but the debt is still looming over me. I thought I had more time, but they're not willing to wait." "We can do something," Lily insisted, her determination flaring up. "We'll hold another fundraiser. We can get everyone together again." Mr. Hale shook his head, a hint of sadness in his eyes. "I don't want to keep asking the community for help, Lily. They've already done so much for me." "But they care about you," she argued, her voice rising with passion. "We can't just let the orchard go. It means too much to all of us." As they stood in the orchard, surrounded by the trees that had come to symbolize hope and connection, Mr. Hale's resolve softened. "You're right. I don't want to impose on anyone. I don't want to seem ungrateful." "You're not ungrateful. You've given so much to this community. Let us help you," Lily said, her heart racing with the urgency of the situation. "If we work together, we can figure this out." Reluctantly, Mr. Hale nodded. "All right, but I want you to promise me something. If we do this, we will focus on making it a celebration, not just a way to raise money. The orchard is about joy, and I don't want to lose sight of that." Lily smiled, a sense of relief washing over her. "I promise. We'll make it a celebration of everything the orchard means to us." The following days were a whirlwind of activity as they began to organize the fundraiser. Lily reached out to the community, inviting everyone to a harvest celebration that would include apple picking, games, and food, all while highlighting the importance of saving the orchard. As the day of the celebration approached, Lily felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. She had worked tirelessly, but she couldn't shake the fear that it might not be enough. Would the community come together again? Would they care enough to help? On the morning of the celebration, the sky was overcast and a chill settled in the air. Dark clouds loomed overhead, and Lily's heart raced with worry. "Mr. Hale, what if it rains?" "No one will come," she fretted, glancing nervously at the sky. He placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "We can't control the weather, but we can control how we respond. Let's stay positive. The community cares, and they will show up for us." As they set up, the first drops of rain began to fall. Panic surged within Lily as she watched the clouds roll in. "Mr. Hale, what do we do?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Let's be prepared," he replied calmly. "We can move everything under the trees and set up tents." People will come, rain or shine. They believe in this orchard. With newfound determination, they quickly rearranged the setup, moving tables and decorations to sheltered areas beneath the trees. Lily's heart raced as she saw dark clouds gather above them, but she refused to give up hope. As the celebration began, the rain came down in earnest, drenching the ground and creating puddles. Lily stood at the entrance, watching as families arrived, their faces a mixture of surprise and determination. To her astonishment, many of them came prepared with umbrellas and raincoats, smiles on their faces despite the weather. "See," Mr. Hale said, a warm smile breaking through the worry etched on his face. "They are here for you and the orchard." Lily couldn't believe her eyes. The community had shown up in droves, refusing to let a little rain dampen their spirits. They set up tents and gathered under the trees, their laughter mingling with the sound of raindrops hitting the leaves. As the celebration kicked off, Lily found herself filled with gratitude. The community rallied around Mr. Hale, sharing stories of their memories in the orchard, their voices rising above the sound of the rain. Children splashed in puddles, while adults huddled together, sharing laughter and delicious treats that had been prepared in advance. "Thank you for coming," Lily called out, her voice ringing with joy. "This orchard means the world to us, and your support is everything." When it was Mr. Hale's turn to speak, he stood in front of the gathering, his heart swelling with gratitude. "I never imagined that this orchard would become a symbol of such love and support. Your presence here today, even in the rain, shows me that we can weather any storm together." The crowd erupted into applause, their spirits undeterred by the weather. They played games, picked apples, and shared homemade dishes, creating an atmosphere of joy and resilience that filled the orchard despite the rain. As the day progressed, the downpour lightened to a gentle drizzle, and the clouds began to part, allowing beams of sunlight to break through. It was as if the sky itself was joining in the celebration, and the air filled with the sweet scent of wet earth and blossoms. In that moment, Lily felt a surge of hope. They had come together against the odds, and the love for the orchard and for each other was undeniable. The support was overwhelming, and as they counted donations at the end of the day, Lily realized that they had raised more than enough to cover Mr. Hale's debt. When they finally sat down to celebrate, surrounded by friends and family, Mr. Hale turned to Lily, his eyes shimmering with emotion. "You've given me the greatest gift, Lily. You brought us all together when I needed it most. Thank you for believing in this orchard and in me." Tears glistened in Lily's eyes as she smiled back at him. "You taught me how to believe, Mr. Hale. You're more than just an orchard. You're a part of our family." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the orchard, Lily felt a sense of triumph wash over her. They had faced a storm, both literally and figuratively, and they had emerged stronger, bound by the love of community and friendship. And as the stars began to twinkle in the clear night sky, both Lily and Mr. Hale knew that they could weather any storm together. Part 7. Roots of Resilience. The autumn leaves danced on the breeze, creating a vibrant carpet of reds, oranges, and yellows underfoot. The orchard, having endured the storm, stood tall and resilient, its trees heavy with the weight of ripening fruit. In the weeks following the harvest celebration, Lily and Mr. Hale felt a renewed sense of purpose as they tended to the orchard together. The community's support had not only helped secure Mr. Hale's financial future, but had also strengthened the bond between him and Lily. Each weekend, they worked side by side, nurturing the trees and sharing stories, laughter, and lessons learned from both life and nature. One crisp Saturday morning, as the sun peeked over the horizon, Lily arrived at the orchard, eager to start the day. Mr. Hale greeted her with a warm smile, his face glowing with the satisfaction of a man who had weathered many storms. "Good morning, Lily. Ready for another day of hard work?" he called, his voice cheerful. "Always," she replied, her energy infectious. "What's on the agenda today?" "Today, we'll be picking the remaining apples and preparing the trees for winter. It's essential to give them a good pruning to ensure they remain healthy for the next season," he explained. Lily nodded, absorbing his words. I'm excited. I've learned so much already about caring for them. As they began to pick apples, a sense of tranquility enveloped the orchard. The birds chirped merrily in the trees, and the gentle breeze rustled the leaves, creating a soothing symphony of nature. Each apple they harvested felt like a small victory, a testament to the resilience of the orchard and their efforts. During a break, they sat on a weathered wooden bench under the shade of an old apple tree. Mr. Hale took a deep breath, savoring the moment. You know, Lily, I've spent many years in this orchard, and I've learned that nature has a way of teaching us about life. Lily looked at him with curiosity. What do you mean? Trees don't just grow, they endure. They face storms, droughts, and pests, yet they find ways to survive and thrive. It's the same with people. We all face challenges, but it's how we respond to them that matters, he explained, his voice steady. I like that, Lily said thoughtfully. So, we should be like the trees, strong and flexible. Exactly. Mr. Hale smiled, his eyes twinkling. And just as trees need good roots to grow, we need strong relationships to support us through tough times. Lily pondered his words, feeling their weight. You've always been like a tree to me, Mr. Hale, strong and supportive. Warm silence settled between them, filled with the unspoken bond they had developed over the months. Just then, Lily's phone buzzed, breaking the moment. She glanced at it, her expression shifting as she read a message. It's from my mom, she said, her brow furrowing. There's been some news about the town council meeting. They're considering a new development project that could affect the orchard. Mr. Hale's expression darkened. What kind of project? Lily typed quickly, gathering information. It looks like they want to build a shopping complex near the edge of town. They think it will bring in more businesses, but it could threaten the surrounding farmland and orchards. Do they have any idea how it might affect the community? He asked, his voice laced with concern. Not yet, but people are worried. My mom said they're holding a town meeting this Friday to discuss it. Lily replied, her heart sinking. If they don't consider the impact on local farms and orchards, it could mean trouble for yours and others like it. Mr. Hale sighed deeply, rubbing his temples. It seems like we face one challenge after another, but we can't just sit back and let this happen. Lily felt a surge of determination. We should attend the meeting and voice our concerns. If we gather support, maybe we can convince the council to reconsider. Good thinking, Lily. We need to rally the community again. Just like before, Mr. Hale agreed, his resolve firming. That week, Lily and Mr. Hale worked tirelessly, spreading the word about the town meeting. They visited neighbors, friends, and local farmers, urging everyone to attend and express their concerns. As the day approached, anticipation built within the community. On Friday evening, the town hall was packed. The air buzzed with tension as residents gathered, anxious to hear the council's proposal. Lily and Mr. Hale arrived early, taking their seats near the front. Lily's heart raced with a mix of excitement and fear. They had come together once again, ready to defend the orchard and their way of life. The meeting began, and the council members presented their plans for the development. As they spoke about economic growth and job creation, Lily felt a knot tightening in her stomach. They painted a picture of progress, but the price was the land that had nurtured generations. Finally, it was time for community members to voice their opinions. Mr. Hale stood up first, his voice steady as he addressed the council. I've spent my life caring for the land and nurturing this orchard. It's not just my livelihood. It's a part of this community's identity. We must consider the consequences of our actions. Once the land is gone, we cannot get it back. The room fell silent as everyone listened intently. Lily felt pride swell in her chest as she watched Mr. Hale speak from the heart. His words resonated with many, and soon others began to rise, sharing their stories of connection to the land and the importance of preserving it. Growing up, I picked apples in this orchard with my grandparents. One woman said, her voice trembling with emotion. This is more than just trees. It's our heritage. I remember the festivals we held here, bringing families together, another man added. If we lose the orchard, we lose a piece of ourselves. As more people spoke, Lily felt the strength of their unity, the resolve to protect what mattered most. When it was her turn, she stood, taking a deep breath to steady herself. This orchard has taught me so much about resilience and friendship. It brings our community together, and we can't let it be destroyed. The council listened, their expressions thoughtful, but doubt lingered in the air. As the meeting continued, Lily and Mr. Hale exchanged glances, both feeling the weight of uncertainty. After the meeting, they gathered with the other community members outside. "We did our best," Mr. Hale said, placing a reassuring hand on Lily's shoulder. "Sometimes, that's all we can do." "But I wish it was enough," Lily replied, her voice quiet with frustration. "I feel like we're fighting an uphill battle." Mr. Hale smiled gently, his eyes filled with understanding. "Sometimes, the uphill battles are the ones that shape us. It's in these moments that we discover our strength." Lily nodded, feeling a flicker of hope amidst the uncertainty. "You're right. We can't give up." In the days that followed, the town council deliberated. The community remained vigilant, attending meetings and voicing their concerns at every opportunity. Lily and Mr. Hale continued to rally support, organizing gatherings to discuss their strategy and keep spirits high. Then, one rainy evening, they received the news they had been waiting for. The council had voted to halt the development project, citing community concerns and the importance of preserving local farms and orchards. Joy erupted among the community members as they gathered to celebrate. Lily and Mr. Hale shared hugs, laughter, and tears of relief. The orchard would remain, a beacon of hope and resilience in their lives. "Thank you for believing in this, Lily," Mr. Hale said, his voice choked with emotion. "You played a vital role in protecting this land." "I couldn't have done it without you, Mr. Hale," she replied, her heart swelling with gratitude. "Your strength and wisdom inspired us all." As they stood in the orchard, surrounded by friends and neighbors, Lily felt a sense of belonging wash over her. They had fought for what mattered, and in doing so, had forged an unbreakable bond within the community. The orchard thrived, a testament to the power of resilience and unity. The lessons learned in the past months remained etched in their hearts, that they were stronger together and that love and care could withstand even the fiercest storms. Part 8. A Season of New Beginnings. As winter settled over the orchard, a serene hush enveloped the landscape. The trees, now bare of leaves, stood tall against the frosty air, their branches etched against the pale sky like intricate lace. Snow blanketed the ground, transforming the orchard into a winter wonderland, and the world felt quiet and still. Lily stood at the edge of the orchard, bundled in her warm coat and scarf, watching as delicate flakes floated down, each one a unique marvel of nature. Despite the chill in the air, her heart was warm with the memories of the past few months. They had faced storms, both literal and figurative, but had emerged stronger, bound together by a shared purpose and deep connection to the land. The community had come together in ways Lily had never imagined possible. They had rallied to protect the orchard, and now, as they looked forward to the future, it was clear that their bonds had only grown stronger. One sunny afternoon, Lily met Mr. Hale in the orchard, where they had decided to plant a few new trees. The orchard was not just a place of history, but a place of hope for the future. Each new tree would represent the resilience and unity of the community. "Ready for another adventure?" Mr. Hale asked, a twinkle in his eye as he held a sapling in his hands. "Absolutely. Let's get these trees in the ground," Lily exclaimed, her enthusiasm infectious. As they dug into the frozen earth, the conversation flowed easily. "You know, it's amazing how trees can withstand the cold," Mr. Hale mused. "They may look bare now, but they're simply resting. They're preparing for new growth in the spring." Lily nodded, realizing the parallel to their own journey. "Just like us. We've faced challenges, but we're stronger for it, and we're ready for whatever comes next." After they finished planting the saplings, they stood back to admire their work. "These trees will grow tall and strong," Mr. Hale said proudly. "And one day, They'll provide shade and fruit for generations to come. Just like the stories we'll share about this orchard, Lily added, her heart swelling with pride. We're creating something lasting here. As winter faded and spring arrived, the orchard began to blossom. Tiny buds emerged from the branches, signaling the renewal of life. The community gathered once again for the annual Spring Festival, a celebration of growth and the promise of new beginnings. Lily and Mr. Hale worked diligently to prepare for the event, transforming the orchard into a vibrant gathering place filled with laughter, music, and the scent of blooming flowers. As they set up decorations, they reminisced about their journey. Remember when we first met? Mr. Hale chuckled. I was a grumpy old man sitting alone at the train station. And I was just a curious girl with a big heart, Lily laughed. It's incredible how much has changed since then. It is, Mr. Hale agreed, his expression softening. You've brought so much joy and hope to my life. This orchard is as much yours as it is mine now. As the festival began, families flocked to the orchard, their faces lit with joy and excitement. The sound of music filled the air, and children raced around, giggling and playing games. Stalls were filled with homemade treats, crafts, and, of course, freshly picked apples. Amidst the festivities, Lily noticed a small group of children gathered around one of the new trees they had planted. They were laughing and playing, pretending to climb the branches. Her heart warmed as she realized the legacy they were building, a place where memories would be made and shared for generations. Later in the day, as the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the orchard, Lily and Mr. Hale stood together, watching the celebration unfold. We did this, Lily. We created something beautiful, Mr. Hale said, his voice filled with emotion. Lily smiled, her eyes shining. It's not just about the orchard. It's about the people who love it and the connections we've formed. We've built a community. Exactly, Mr. Hale replied. And it's those connections that will carry us through whatever comes next. Just like the roots of a tree, our relationships will hold us steady. As twilight descended, the crowd gathered for a moment of reflection. Lily took the stage, her heart pounding with excitement. Thank you all for being here today. This orchard is a symbol of our strength, resilience, and love for one another. It has weathered storms, but it stands tall, just like our community. Applause erupted as Lily's words resonated with everyone present. Let's continue to nurture this place and each other, ensuring that it thrives for years to come. Together, we can face anything. As the festival continued, the air filled with laughter, music, and the delightful aroma of food. Lily and Mr. Hale joined the festivities, dancing and celebrating alongside friends and family. The sense of belonging enveloped them like a warm blanket. As the night wore on, fireworks lit up the sky, bursting into brilliant colors that reflected the joy in their hearts. Lily stood beside Mr. Hale, her spirits soaring with happiness. I never imagined we would create something this special together, she said, her voice filled with wonder. Neither did I, Mr. Hale replied, his eyes twinkling with warmth. But look at what we've built. This orchard is a testament to the love and care we've poured into it, and it's only just the beginning. With that, they watched the fireworks illuminate the sky, each explosion a celebration of their journey, their resilience, their friendship, and their unyielding spirit. In the days that followed, the orchard continued to flourish. The new trees grew strong, blossoming with vibrant flowers that would eventually yield delicious apples. Lily and Mr. Hale worked together, tending to the land, always sharing laughter, stories, and dreams for the future. As spring turned to summer, the orchard became a hub of activity, filled with families picking apples and making memories. Lily felt a deep sense of fulfillment knowing that they had created a legacy that would endure. In time, she realized that the orchard was more than just a piece of land. It was a living testament to the power of community, friendship, and love. It was a reminder that no matter the challenges they faced, they could overcome them together. As she stood amidst the trees, feeling the warm sunlight on her face, Lily smiled, knowing that she had found her place in the world. The orchard, with its roots deep in the soil and branches reaching for the sky, symbolized the beauty of new beginnings and the strength found in unity. And so, with hope in her heart and the promise of tomorrow in her eyes, Lily knew that whatever lay ahead, she would face it with courage and grace, surrounded by the people she loved.
Whispering echoes.